Hello and very welcome to this week's blockchain gaming news roundup. It is Thursday, the 20th of February, and I'm just pointing that out in case you read this on a Friday and there's been some sort of earth-shattering industry news that we haven't covered from now until then. And there hasn't actually been that much news this week, so I doubt there'll be much before tomorrow. But anyway, let's start off by mentioning Forkast, which is the prediction market which has gone live on the Ronin network. So can you unfold a little bit what that is, who is behind it, and
I can.
Token launch and so on. Sorry, I'm the host, Jenny Jordan, as ever, and I'm handing over to John.
Bit out of sorts this week with it being half term for our children, so harder to find the time. So this is actually, hopefully I won't bore everyone too much, but Forkast is something I've been looking forward to for quite a while. So as you say, it is a prediction market. So I guess over the last sort of year or so, we've got in general, the mass market's got a bit more used to those. Poly market being sort of the first crypto prediction market that got very popular around the US election, particularly when it was people there were spending actually quite a lot of money sort of voting up Donald Trump, particularly after, the sort of Joe Biden dropped out and all that. There's a lot of uncertainty in the sort of general media, and I think they all like to choose, all went to sort of poly market as a place where they could go. But these guys who may be smart, maybe making money off this stuff, think this. And obviously poly market was proven to be correct in the sense that it was sort of the earliest indicator that people thought Trump were going to win. So, what are prediction markets? I mean, very simple. They are markets where people set up questions, and usually that is most simply, you'd have a question: is Donald Trump going to win the US election? And then people would effectively buy a position there. So the market might be 60%, and you might go, well, I think Donald Trump's going to win. So I'll buy it. Whatever. You might be a bit more nuanced and go, I think Donald Trump is going to win, but I think the probability is sort of lower than that. So there's different sort of ways of doing it. So Forkast, as you say, is gone live on the Ronin blockchain. So that's interesting in the sense that it's one of the first non-gaming apps. So this is part of Ronin going permissionless. So there's lots of games and lots of sort of apps coming to Ronin, and this is one of the first ones. It's actually sort of an interesting history that it comes from a company called Community Gaming, who've been around for years. I've actually known Chris, the CEO there, for a long time. And originally, and it still does this. They launched as a esports platform. So they are an esports platform where you can plug in Web 2 or Web 3 games, doesn't really matter. And the blockchain bit is that, you sort of set up how you want your tournament to work, and you say the winner gets, 100 USDC. And you plug the game into the network, and then instead of sort of having to sort of PayPal people money, it just does it automatically. So that's the first thing they've done, and they've been running that for years, and they've been very closely aligned actually with Sky Mavis and Ronin. So this is a sort of a second sort of product that they're doing, which is sort of related but not related. So there's actually quite a lot of esports stuff in there. So some of the prediction markets are around streaming and who's going to win various esports tournaments. But obviously it's sort of more general. So there's just general crypto stuff. I don't think there's a lot of politics in at the moment actually, but it's only just gone live.
Now when you're on.
yeah, maybe. So it's quite an interesting market if you, like me, are sort of interested in sort of numbers and the future and the fact that, there's some, to some degree, you can, if you think, well, everyone thinks they are good at this sort of stuff, so you can prove whether you can by trying to make money on it, because basically, you're looking at different markets, and some of them are more complicated. So one of them might be, so one it actually is, I've been looking at this today, what will be the next game on the Ronin blockchain to hit 300,000 daily active unique wallets? So, example. Say again.
Created that one, did you?
I didn't create that one. No, you can't create them so far, but so I didn't create that one, but I think that will come. And the current sort of setup is the options you could vote for is Pixels, Axie Infinity, Aperon, or the Machines Arena, or another one. So interestingly, only two of those games have ever done more than 300,000. So that's Pixels and Axie. Pixels is the biggest game at the moment on about 230. So from one point of view, from that point of view, from my point of view at least, I would go Pixels is probably the most likely because it's been higher than that, and it's the closest to that. Of course, if no one does it within the time frame that the prediction's been set out, the whole thing just sort of resets itself and everyone gets their money back. So you can do your predictions on that. So it is. I won't get into all the details. It is complicated in the sense that you're not just going in and buying. Well, particularly at the early stages, there's not a very deep market. So the company for the community gaming people are not setting this up themselves. They're not setting the percentages. The percentages are basically set up when people come in and what they call buy positions. So I might come in and go, I think 60% chance that Pixels will be the first game to do 300,000, and that sits there as an order, and then someone has to come in and take the other side of that. So basically, someone has to come in and go, oh, I don't think Pixels is going to be the first game to 300,000, and they'll take the other side of that sort of prediction. And over time, as more people come in and set the percentages, so it's all really about the percentages you want. So you could be correct, but if I come in and go, I think it's 99%, positive that Pixels is going to be the next game to 300,000, then if that is the case, then that market resolves to 1, and so I just gain 1 cent. So I've risked basically 99 cents to win 1 cent. So that's not very sort of sensible. So I won't get into all the details, but if you get into this stuff, you really get into it, and you can. It's quite a flexible way of doing it, and effectively, these are sort of like it's like options trading for shares. So you're sort of making predictions on sort of things in the future, and you can trade those sort of financial assets. So people like me are getting all into that. So that's sort of fun. There's another part of it, which is the token. So there's a token called the CGX token, Community Gaming Token, and that's gone live as well, obviously at the same time. You don't actually use the token to do these predictions, buy these predictions. You're actually using, effectively, you have USDC on the Ronin blockchain, and you convert that to a sort of in-platform, they call it credits, effectively, on a one-to-one basis. So 10 USDC is 10 credits, and then everything happens in the platform happens with these credits. And if you fulfill certain activity, and obviously you're not doing stupid stuff, you can then sort of withdraw your credits out at the end. If you're sort of make money, you withdraw them out back to USDC, back to your wallet. So that's a sort of the flow. But they have this CGX token, and that's given out as rewards in Forkast. So you can just buy it on exchanges as well. So it's a typical blockchain asset running on the Ronin blockchain. But you can get that and you can stake it for certain periods of time, and then you basically, for your staking, you get gacha boxes. So you get sort of these boxes that when you open them, they're time based. So at the moment, it takes a month. I've just staked like $10 or something, and it's going to take me a month to get my loot boxes out, and then the loot boxes drop different sort of rewards as well. So I guess that's some legal aspects about how you do that, because a lot of people, I've been trying not to use the term gamble or bet in this, because these are prediction markets, not gambling markets. They're often, people sort of talk about them in the same way, but from a legal point of view, you'd be very, very careful, particularly in the US. And if it's gambling, you need a gambling license. And if it's predicting, then it's a skill-based gaming, and there's a sort of fine differentiation between that. So it's not gambling; it's a prediction market. But anyway, so yeah, it's not the sort of thing I would recommend people do to try and make money. I think obviously the point is you can make money out of it, but you have to, one, be maybe a little bit lucky, but also you end up having to be very sort of thoughtful about making predictions and what percentage you want to make the predictions, because you could even make money from getting a prediction wrong, because if you sell your sort of the prediction you've chosen at the right time. So anyway, we won't go into all that, but for people like me, and I guess there are sort of quite a few of those in sort of crypto, really, really interesting. And this is interesting because there's lots of prediction markets out there, but this one has this sort of game focus, particularly a Ronin focus. So if you know a little bit about Ronin, there's a lot of these sort of the question that I actually I didn't create. Well, I didn't create it personally, because you can't create on the platform, but I spoke to Chris, the CEO, and said, here's a question to put in. So is the AXS token going to have a bigger market cap than the RON token? So that's a sort of
we covered that last week, didn't we? And it had just split it then. So.
It had just flipped it. So that's quite a nice that's quite a nice question. So I try and think about sort of nice questions that have sort of some nuance to them. Unfortunately, the as you say, the Ron did actually flip AXS. So presumably now it could go back the other way, of course. But it seems unlikely now for that to be the case. So but there's those sort of things in there. Yeah, I think it's sort of fun.
But the staking side of it seems quite a big part of the project. So of the sort of project, that if you stake, that's actually giving you eligibility to create questions, doesn't it? I think that sort of
Yeah,
unlocks that ability.
I think that sort of stuff's on the roadmap. So obviously, you want, and personally, I've used a lot of these sort of different platforms over the years. So there's one called Manifold I've used for a long time, which isn't crypto and doesn't even use real money. So that's just a sort of a status one. And the really nice thing about that is you can create these questions. So I went through a whole phase of really thinking about how you create interesting questions that are quite hard for people to work out. So one of my favorite ones was who's gonna die first between sort of Putin and Biden, or you get into all this sort of crazy stuff. Anyway, so that'll be fun when that happens, but that'll be a bit way down. And I think that there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's governance, sort of, as you have with these tokens, you try and build different sort of use cases into them, because it is interesting that this token isn't a utility token in the sense it isn't being used for the platform itself. They're just going with the USDC. Very sensible decision. But then you have to have some. Why do you have a token? Obviously, people like me who are quite into this sort of stuff will be quite into the governance, and definitely I would. If they said you have to buy, $1,000 worth of this token to start making up questions, then I would buy $1,000 of it to start making up questions, because I would get more than $1,000 worth of joy out of making up silly questions about prediction markets.
Good.
And just to say, it isn't, I'm saying silly, but these markets can be quite valuable. Maybe not this one so much at the moment, but say the stuff like prediction markets in the real world, people like doing predictions about the price of oil or something like that. I mean, that's sort of handled by financial instruments already. But some of these things can provide useful information, because people are prepared to spend money. Experts in the space are prepared to spend money to prove themselves to be correct. So that these markets, and people like economists in particular, the people like Tyler Cowen and people like that, have really argued that prediction markets are a very important way of gaining better knowledge around some quite obscure markets that can't be handled by sort of traditional financial instruments. So I'm saying it's a bit silly, and maybe in the case of crypto and Ronin that is the case, but there can be some really useful stuff that comes out of it.
Absolutely. Good point. Right, now this is a project we've covered a little bit in the past, but we haven't sort of done a really good job of kind of unfolding what it is. So I'm hoping you're going to clarify a little bit this week, because you have been talking to, what's it called, B3's...
Daryl.
Yeah, Carol.
Daryl Yu.
Say it again.
Daryl Yu.
Oh, Daryl, yes.
Yeah.
You've been talking to him, and there's also been some news regarding B3 as SuperGaming have decided to launch their own super chain on B3. So let's just dive in a little bit more. Start sort of at the start, at fundamentals. What is B3? What did you talk about? And what are these super chains that they are kind of strongly promoting?
Yes, so it was good actually for Daryl. So I actually spoke to him last week. Podcast came out yesterday, and last week was actually when their token went live, B3 token. So that was sort of they were very sort of scatty and very very sleep deprived. So it was good. It was nice for him to sort of find time to chat. So yes, as you say, it was B3 is sort of one of these projects that sort of come a little bit out of nowhere. As I've sort of spoke to him and thought about it more, I think that's very much because it's come out of the Coinbase's base blockchain. So the three founders of B3, it's actually a bit more complicated than that. It's two founders are in the company called NPC Labs, which is the sort of dev company, and then there's a foundation. You have to have a foundation to launch the token called Player One Foundation, and the head of that was one of their co-founders in Base. So they were there when sort of Base happened, as that's an L2 that Coinbase runs, and Daryl was actually head of infrastructure and gaming there. So, and the way he says it is, when Base came along, there wasn't really a lot of games on it. That sort of improved last year, but he said people were coming on and wanting to sort of run fully on-chain games on Base, and the sort of the problem was, even though Base is much cheaper than Ethereum and much faster than Ethereum, if you wanted to run like a fully on-chain game on it, there's lots of other stuff running on it as well. So there's a lot of DeFi there now. There has been historically a lot of sort of NFT mints and all this sort of stuff. So it becomes this typical problem where if you're trying to run your game on it, someone might be running something else on it, and if they're congesting the network, then your game won't work, or the gas prices will go up a lot, and that causes problems. So it sort of came out of this very real problem people have, and so sort of Daryl and his co-founders sort of thinking, how can we do this? And obviously the example is let's do an L3. so it's called B3. It is an L3 blockchain. It sort of does its, it runs as a blockchain and then batches its transactions back to Base, and then of course Base batches its transaction back to Ethereum. So you have the sort of one step removed. You have the security of Ethereum, which everyone agrees is sort of the best. But then it has a data availability, which is a sort of different sort of way of accessing sort of on-chain data on an even cheaper blockchain called Celestia. So that's the sort of setup from that point of view. And as you say, the sort of the focus of B3, and they call it the open gaming ecosystem. So they have this thing called game chains, is what they call them. I mean, everyone has a different sort of term. So you have like elastic chains, I think is that ZK Sync, and it used to be Avalanche had subnets, and so there's all this sort of terminology you have. It doesn't really matter. But the vision is every game on B3 basically runs its own blockchain using B3's sort of infrastructure. And that means, you're not sharing block space with any other game. You can't be congested by any other game. You can sort of set up the performance of your chain exactly how you want it, and it's obviously cheaper and faster than it would be otherwise. But then there's that's not particularly novel. We've seen sort of that stuff in the past. But what they're trying to do with B3 is have this sort of wide infrastructure where lots of games can launch on these very fast blockchains, but also have sort of shared sort of culture between the two. That's why it's an ecosystem. So one of the again, it's not sort of rocket science, but one of the sort of key things he was talking about is that if I so Parallel are going to launch their shooter game on B3, and also Infinigods are running their games on B3 chains as well. So his example is, those games are going to be probably pretty successful, or they're known products, of a certain quality, so they're going to have a certain amount of volume, but that doesn't mean that to be an ecosystem, you sort of have to be part of a community, and too often games sort of go, I'm just gonna do my marketing for my game and get everyone in my game, and I don't really want them going to any other game, any other blockchain at all, even on B3. So a way of sort of aligning these incentives is if someone comes in and starts playing the Parallel shooter game, and then either gets bored or also goes, there's this cool mobile game called what's it called, Kings of Destiny, and then goes to start to play that one. Obviously, you're sort of using the same sort of wallet address, and then actually decides they really like King of Destiny and start spending money in there. Parallel, in a sense, has sort of lost a user because that person's maybe decides they're going to focus on King of Destiny. But under the B3 sort of protocol, 30% of the activity of the revenue that they're spending within Infinigods on Infinigods God chains, or whatever it's called, that's going to go back to Parallel. So in a sense, the idea is, because what we've sort of seen is lots of these, there's so many new blockchains, so many new ecosystems, but it's not very clear. And adding these things is actually growing the market. It's sort of just chopping up the market more because everyone's fighting over the same, 100,000, 200,000, whatever number you want to make up, but it's not a large number. And no one's really looking to grow the pie, although they all say they are. So one of the things we'll see if it works with B3, they're saying very fast performant blockchain, very easy to get into, and it's sort of even if your games aren't necessarily successful, if you can onboard people who then go spending in other games, you get 30% is obviously sort of the Apple and Google sort of spread on the App Store. That's sort of in a sort of a number in our heads, but that's sort of quite a big chunk. I don't know if that happens indefinitely. I don't know if someone goes from parallel to Infinite Gods to the next one, how far down the sort of loop it goes. But you can sort of see what they're trying to do with the culture. Will it work? Who knows? To some degree, I still believe that the problem is not we need more block space, is we need to fill up block space of all these blockchains that are here already. So but in a sense, I think B3 is interesting, and they launched its token last week, and the token actually, at the moment we're in sort of the doldrums for gaming tokens. They've all been hammered down 50% over the last sort of 2 months. It's really, really sort of poor sort of sentiment around it. But B3 is actually the one that it went up 200% from launch. It's come down a little bit since then, obviously. But I think because it has the cachet of Coinbase and Base, and famously, sort of Base doesn't have a token, so I wouldn't say you should think of it this way, but I think people are thinking of B3 as sort of the gaming token of Base. So and it got institutional sort of support. It got well funded. They have a sort of like all these things. They have a investment fund, and they say at least they're quite they're prepared to fund interesting sort of projects. So I think they have a really good sort of starting point, and they have some well-known teams. You also mentioned there's a Indian company called SuperGaming who actually sort of they're not that well known outside of India, but they have like a hyper gaming platform. So they have a lot of users, and they want to use B3 to sort of onboard those people to Web3. So these are Web2 games, sort of fairly simple sort of games. So again, we can see, is it going to work or not? I don't know, but I think there's more coming as well. So I think the interesting thing with B3 is because actually they're sort of quite open in terms of their infrastructure, and they have this sort of like a incentive to sort of share users. That it could be like a sweet spot. In a sense, it's still maybe them taking games from other blockchains, so there is a bit of a sort of competitive thing going on there. But it was an interesting sort of conversation, and I think you can see the vision of what they're trying to do. To a degree in blockchain, lots of people have sort of cool visions, and obviously the difficult bit is actually implementing them. And that's sort of now where they are. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Well, in terms of taking games from other blockchains, that's been happening all along, isn't it? So if they do provide a solution that game developers find attractive, then obviously that's a good thing for the industry in the long term. Maybe sort of a bit of a loss for some ecosystems, but yeah, let's wait and see how it turns out. So how much is the token up then in a week? It's about 60% still or something?
I think it was up 200% and now it's up 60%. So yeah, it's yeah. But it's the only gaming. I mean, it's only been out for a week, so it's slightly ridiculous to talk about it. But it's the only gaming token that has been up over the last week.
So you're keeping track of the top 100 particularly. How many gaming tokens are in top 100 crypto at the moment?
I think it's. I haven't looked at it actually. I think it's still so Immutable. Sort of there. It's sort of drifting down a little bit. So we have Immutable and we have Gala, which obviously a bit of they're all meme coins, I suppose. Gala definitely a meme coin, and then Flocky, which is also a meme coin, and then Sand. Sand was sort of last time I looked, it was number 100, and then after that we have Ronin at 112. So there's still 4 in the top 100. I still think I should actually get a prediction market. I did actually ask them at Forkast to set up a prediction market saying how many gaming tokens will be in the top 100 by the end of whenever. But they've not done it yet. But that's quite an interesting one because you could quite easily make a case for 0. You could sort of I wouldn't really make a strong case for more than we currently have. That's 4. But clearly there's some probability that someone could launch something that does really well. But you need to get to about $1 billion of market cap at the moment to get in the top 100 cryptos. So that's that's fairly substantial amount.
Very optimistic. Right. Okay. On that note, actually, we're going to finish off. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next week again. Hopefully back to normal as always. Bye-bye.
Bye.